All right, guys, just getting started just a couple minutes early with the Ask Me Anything live stream. Sorry about it being on a Thursday and not on a Tuesday, as we would normally. I normally try to do these on Tuesdays if I can. And if you happen to be at the East Side Republican Club Tuesday night, you'll know why I wasn't able to do the live stream, because there was a conflict there. Didn't know I was going to be the speaker until the weekend before, and that's what kind of caused me to move some things around. So on Monday, I made a presentation to the Chelan Douglas Women's Republican Club out of Wenatchee for lunch, and then the next Tuesday evening, I was in Redmond doing a presentation at the Willowcrest Stables up there for the East Side Republican Club. And that's why we kind of pushed the video production here to today, which is Thursday. And just a quick reminder for people, and I'll try to repeat myself on this as we go along. If you are going to ask any questions, if you can, just do the say We the Govern, just so that it's easier for me to spot the question up. There tends to be a bunch of comments that go up on the screen here, and then if I can't find your question, sometimes I miss it in the list. So try to do that if you can. One of the things that I do try to do, since we talked about this a little while ago, is give you an update on where I'll be kind of in the coming up weeks. I do a lot of, even though I do a lot of videos, and now I try to do at least one live stream a week. I do spend a lot of time going around the state doing speaking engagements or emceeing at events or moderating debates or training activists, stuff I've been doing for a long time. And so I still spend a decent amount of my time doing that. And just to give you a quick update on some of the scheduling that I do know of coming up, one of them is going to be on January 25th. Up in Montlake Terrace at the Lake Bollinger Center, 2300 Lakeview Drive, if you don't know where that is. Starting, I think, at 6:30 that evening. I'll be doing, for a couple hours, I'll be doing some activist training. And so that's kind of my current plan right now. And so I know I'll be up there. I think the room can hold about 100. So if you're interested in coming by and just listening to some of the activism training, I don't know that we've fleshed out exactly what we're planning to cover while I'm out there, but these are pretty normal. I do a lot of these types of training sessions. Sometimes in the past, I've talked about how to do training people how to use the Public Records Act, how to file PDC complaints and do PDC research, how to run for office. What do you do if you get into office and you're going to try to make an impact on liberty and freedom, or at least controlling the bloat of the administrative state? What's the process you go about trying to do that? There's all kinds of different types of training that I do, and it's fairly adaptable, and it's usually pretty interactive. So I'm looking forward to that. That should be a good one. So if you happen to be up there in that area, I'm not taking point on the organizing. I'm just coming in to do the training. But I think they'll have anybody who wants to be there. If you're interested in helping on the freedom and liberty side of the equation, that's probably not a bad place for you to be. However, if you're not going to be there, and that's Thursday evening on the January 25th, that weekend, January 26th through the 28th, is the Roanoke Conference. I'm on the board of the Roanoke Conference. I think I've been to Roanoke every year except for the first year that they had it. And I've been on the board, I think, since 2015, if I remember right. Been on the board a while now, and it's just a great conference. If you care about anything, if you're kind of center right in the state at all, this is a good conference for you to go to. There'll be about 500, 600 people there. They'll have speakers, panel discussions. One of the things I think that's underappreciated by a lot of people is just the value in being able to network with other activists around the state and find out what they're doing, what they're involved in, get a chance to meet a lot of legislators out at Ocean Shores. If you haven't signed up yet for Roanoke, go ahead and go on their website and sign up. You do have to pay for that, and you have to get a hotel while you're out there. But it's really an opportunity for, from Friday night essentially all the way through Sunday morning, an opportunity to meet with a lot of other people who kind of share your beliefs and interests, or at least they're in that general spectrum. And some of them are going to be more traditional Republican sort of folks. Some are going to be a little bit more activist oriented. Some will be more insiders, people who are involved in a lot of stuff in Olympia. And there's a lot of elected officials that are out there. So it's kind of a fun time to network with other people. And I've really, really enjoyed being out there. And I've enjoyed being on the board for as long as I have. So that's another opportunity to meet me. If you do watch my channel or you'll watch the live stream or you're making comments here, make sure that you come up to me at Roanoke, and you're going to be there, and make sure you introduce yourself to me. I do run into people in public who watch my the YouTube channel, or and of course I don't necessarily know who they are when they're doing that, but it's fun to chat with people in public that are familiar with the videos or familiar with the channel or anything else. But it doesn't really compare to actually meeting people in person. The other one that's coming up after that is the Tuesday, February 6th. I know I'm going to be doing a presentation to the Whatcom Women's Republican Club up in Bellingham. I don't know the exact location where that's going to be, but I will be up there training. Probably a lot of times when I go up to Whatcom County, I might link it into a couple other events. So I may go out to San Juan County and do something there either the day before or the day after, or since this is a lunch presentation, I might wrap it into like an evening training session for activists up there too. That is a Tuesday, which means that week I'm probably going to be doing a Thursday live stream again. But another little thing, this Saturday morning, I'll be on KGMI Radio in Bellingham. It's a call-in, so I won't be physically in Bellingham. I'm going to be in Olympia, getting ready to go to the caucus meeting at Olympia High School, and the Republican caucus meeting, and I'm being interviewed by Chris Halterman up there from KGMI Radio. I've actually substituted at that radio a few times in the past and hosted for him. So, and I'm always, Chris is just a longtime friend of mine, so it's always fun to go and do a quick radio show with her. I'll be the guest on the show. So that's what I have right now immediately on the schedule in the next couple weeks or so. And I'll try to remember just to repeat it. I know this has been something that people have asked me to do in the past, and so I'm just trying to make sure that I keep providing that information. Now, this week is the beginning of the legislative session. I did film a video today on some of the stupidest bills that have been proposed in Olympia. It's impossible for me to cover them all, but in a short video, I was able to cover 3 of them just real quick, some of the exceptionally stupid videos that are proposed. And there were a lot to choose from. It's certainly not comprehensive, because if it was, it would take me days and days to cover all the really stupid videos. Stupid proposals, I should say, stupid bills that they propose. And remember, these are proposed bills. A small percentage of them ever become law. Most of them, some of them are actually submitted by legislators because they want clickbait and a nice story at the beginning to show how much they hate Trump, or to show how much they really believe in, hurting conservatives, or they're down with the struggle with violent criminals, or something. And so some of them they know won't get through, and that they're just patently absurd and illegal on their face. But they propose them anyway, and they propose them for the special interests that they need to help fund their campaigns, and that's kind of how it goes. So a lot of the stupid bills, the exceptionally stupid bills that are proposed this cycle, are usually sponsored by Democrats. Every now and then they get a Republican to sign on that may not know what's going on, or may have a problem. And so, but it is still worth talking about those videos. So I did 3 of them, and we can get into those a little bit later if you want. But there's just a lot of things going on right now all at the same time. So let me get to some of the questions that you're asking. I'll see if I can start with those, and we'll get going here. And let's go to the first question. Jack, you had this question posted up earlier, even before the show started. So this is: have you heard of the 5 anti-2A bills being up for hearing on the same day, which is, I think, January 16th? I see Jason mentioned something down here later in another question, and he's talking about the 6 gun control bills. And I think Jason's correct, because I think there's all of them. I think there's 6 of them. I don't think there's 5. And I'm familiar with a couple of them that I've been following. One is the ammo, the ammo tax bill, and a lot of the. So listen, the left's trying to demonstrate a couple of things this legislative cycle in Olympia. Beyond the fact that they're incredibly upset and angry that these initiatives are going to be on the ballot. And the initiatives actually tie the legislature's hands on a whole bunch of different categories of law that they actually can't even touch during the legislative session because there's an initiative that's qualified for the ballot. And so it kind of locks down that part of the law. They can't really do anything in the legislature when they have an initiative to the legislature on those issues. So that, I think, is that's a pretty big deal, actually. And so that, I think, is the dominant. It kind of overshadows everything going on in Olympia today. And it's probably one of the most consequential political things that's happened in our state, at least in a positive playing offense sort of way, in Washington for a long time. So it's a big deal, and just I think it's just starting to sink in. The left, of course, is mostly in a panic, and that includes the legislators, are in a panic because those initiatives, assuming they pass, have the ability to cut about $2.3 billion a year out of their slush fund and their kickback schemes through grant grifting operations or whatever. So I think that's the biggest impact. The gun bills, I think most of them are probably just for show, just to prove maybe they want some money from Nick Hanau or Paul Allen or Bill Gates or something, or Bloomberg. And so this is one of their ways of demonstrating they deserve that. Historically, the way they propose those bills is most of them don't get through, and they know they won't. And they, so we'll see, we'll see how that goes. But the January 16th, I would say that's a good time to flood the zone and send in a lot of comments against the collective stupidity that the Democrats are trying to push through. And I think most of those are negative. I don't think too many of those are positive bills at this point in time. So let's see. Let me go in here. There's another question. Average Geek Joe, you're asking a question about SB Senate Bill 5857, which is the Sam Hunt bill on recodifying some PDC stuff. Well, the one thing to remember about Sam Hunt is he's actually one of the people who inspired me to get involved in filing PDC complaints. This is going back a number of years, but when he had come out and had attacked me at the time for being involved in Thurston County Commission races, where all the Democrats got booted off the Thurston County Commission, and that was 2016. And they filed a PDC complaint against me. It wasn't him specifically, but it was one of his friends. And then he went in the paper and had all kinds of negative things to say about me, so I filed a PDC complaint on him. In his response, the PDC said, Glenn doesn't know anything about the campaign finance laws. And I kind of realized at the time, he's probably right, I don't. So I really studied up on it, memorized, got more engaged and involved in the process. And the next complaint I filed against Sam Hunt forced the Attorney General to sue him. And Bob Ferguson actually had to sue Sam Hunt. Sam Hunt had to pay a pretty significant fine. Probably wasn't so much fun for him. He was pretty annoyed at me. I also hit the Speaker of the House, Frank Chopp, at the time, and a whole bunch, 17 other Democrats and judges at the time. And so ever since then, Sam Hunt has been angry at the PDC because that was the first time in 30 years that any Republicans had bothered to ever actually push back on some of the campaign finance insanity. Up until that point in time, it had always been used as an abusive process to attack Republicans, not just Tim Wyman, but random Republican groups. Kim Wyman, Bob Ferguson had coordinated to attack Kim Wyman, for example. It had been used against Richard DeBolt. It had been used against a whole bunch of people. Stories that the media blew up and exaggerated on the significance of the violations. And then I caught hundreds and hundreds of Democrat groups, hundreds, that's not an exaggeration, that's actually appropriate, hundreds of them breaking those same laws, and many of them a lot worse than any of the violations they'd had against Republicans. And so suddenly the campaign finance laws weren't so cool or fun anymore for Sam Hunt and his friends, especially after he got fined. And so now, ever since then, the Democrats have been trying to water down or game the PDC rules. One of the bill, and I'm not sure actually, this is Senate Bill 5857. One of them I know that was proposed, and I don't know that it's going to go anywhere now, but it was trying to claim that if a business had 1% potential foreign influence somewhere along the way, that it'd be illegal for them to participate in the political process. And it's kind of a fake bill idea because technically they've had this idea in the PDC laws for a while. And I filed a complaint against Ramos, the representative out of the 40th Ledge District, which is like Skagit and San Juan County up in that area, Bellingham. And he had basically taken money from a company that was 100% owned by Europeans. Like there was not a single American owner there at that company. And it was a clear-cut case of him violating that law by taking money from them. Now, I don't think the law is good. I think the law is a pathetic and ridiculous rule change that they had made, but I nevertheless went after him on that. And the PDC gave him a pass, and he was allowed to have a pass on it, basically because the form that company filled out said they're not under foreign control or foreign influence, even though the company's 100% owned by Europeans. It was all foreign. There was zero American ownership in that one. So that was ridiculous, and it really showed the bankrupt nature of the campaign finance laws in the sense that they weren't really applying them in the way that they were writing them. It was only cool if they could write them in a way that they could keep Microsoft out, say, because 1% of their public shareholders might be Canadian, something like that. And so that was kind of one of the arguments. So I'm not sure 58, 57 is that one. There were a couple others that had come up, so I'll have to look that one up. I just don't have it memorized, so I'm not sure which one that is. Let's go and look at the next question here. Right. Great news on the radio regarding the first initiative to the legislature regarding police authority levels being restored. Yay. Pamela, you had that. I don't think that's a question, but I'll have to find out what you mean, but I'm not totally sure so unless the legislatures decide to pass that initiative to the legislature, which they could if they wanted to, and make it law, in a way I kind of feel like of all the 6 initiatives, that's like the one that comes the closest to being possible that the Democrats may decide that they would just pass it as is because they have that option. But I'm not sure. I mean, I think they're kind of more focused on giving criminals a free pass. If you looked at some of the list of the bills, the lion's share of the bills that the Democrats have proposed are bills that make it easier for violent felons to get out early, making sure they can vote, making sure that if they commit a crime with a gun, that's okay, that there's no firearm enhancement, which is that Roger Goodman proposed that bill. He's out of Kirkland, another foolish Democrat in the legislature. That's a terrible bill. It was one of the dumb bills that I focused on. So that I think it's worth exposing because there's nothing that apparently the Democrats in Washington State love more than violent criminals who kill and maim and destroy the community. And they're going out of their way to make sure that violent criminals get free rein all over the place. This is an old story for Democrats, and I think that I have to mention this sometimes, that people forget that these exact stupid policies when it comes to criminal law have been tried before. They moved down this road in the 60s, and you had the biggest surge in crime in American history occur between the 60s up into the 80s and 90s. Multiple decades of terribly increasing crime rates and murder rates and car theft and assault and rape and every possible measurement. Real crimes, not crimes against bureaucracy, which those crimes are the ones that Democrats want to put people in prison for life. If you commit a crime against bureaucracy, like parade without a permit in Washington, D.C., for example, for that you should get 22 years. But if you just go out and murder a few people and do drive-by shooting to a Democrat, that means that you should be just put right back out on the street the next day, and there certainly shouldn't be any bail. You probably shouldn't go to prison. You're probably just misunderstood. And it's probably racist if you're put in jail, which is funny because their presumption always with the criminal justice system is always acting like that every criminal must be a minority of some kind, and that's the racist attitude that all Democrats seem to have. So the policies that they're pushing really seem to reflect this bias, and the bills that they're at least proposed is pretty crazy, pretty ridiculous. Let's see, got a question. You guys do everything you can to get the word out about Semi Bird. We're handing out flyers. We're getting great results. Do it at your grocery stores. This is from Dawn. Not a question, so let me jump down here. Pamela, you got what is Semi going to do for Tumwater? Does he golf? I don't know if Semi golfs at all. I don't know, but I'm not generally sure. I think when you're running for governor, usually you're probably not bringing it down to the city level. It'd be interesting if somebody would do that more often than not. But most Republicans are usually going to be running for governor to try to change what's going on. Let's see. Technical difficulties. Got a question. I think that's a question here. What was the story with Jay Inslee reversing the car tab vote? I haven't paid for tabs since. Riding dirty. You're not alone, but a lot of people aren't paying for the car tab since then. Well, the car tab initiative is what you're really referring to there was the Iman's kind of last initiative. He was able to get out the door successfully. And this was the, I don't remember the number on it now, but I did a whole story on it. I went to Tim Iman's election night party and did a story about how the other side spent $5 million trying to defeat it, and Iman had no money to actually promote it. But he had used his retirement fund to fund the initiative signature gathering process, and got it across the finish line. And so people voted for it, of course, as they have every single time it's been on the ballot. And the challenge, probably less Inslee directly, is more Bob Ferguson, was basically sabotaging it and making sure that the Supreme Court would throw it out. It's a little bit more complicated than the way I'm representing it, because there are some nuances here, but generally the history has typically been in Washington State that if the citizens clearly vote for an initiative like this, even if the Supreme Court's thrown it out, which Governor Locke did this later, he went back and just said, we're going to make it law because clearly the people have spoken. Democrats aren't that way anymore. Democrats may talk about supposedly caring about democracy, but there's no Democrat in Washington State that cares about democracy anymore. The bills, in fact, some of the bills they propose clearly demonstrate this. They want to make it so that they can throw people off the ballot now very easily just based on their own random set of self-created justification for throwing people off the ballot. They obviously are doing this under the guise of Trump. That's the Trump obsession that the Democrats have in the state. But it's really more significant than that. It's actually them trying to use, they want to be able to have the ability to throw people off the ballot like they do in Russia or Venezuela or Zimbabwe. And that's really what the Democrats are aspiring to, right? Because there's nothing better if you can remove your opponents from the ballot and you never have to run against them. Then that's kind of that's the holy grail of the Democrat Party if they can do that. So they've just completely gone down the road in this weird anti-democratic sort of thing. Plus the way they're reacting to the initiatives. Remember, all these same people, to a person, thought 1639, the anti-gun initiative that was exclusively funded by billionaires and actually cost more than the 6 initiatives that just got on the ballot. They think that one was totally okay. You can go back and watch every Democrat in Washington State singing its praises, just like they did on 1631, which was it was a carbon tax initiative that failed at the ballot box. They spent $30-some-odd million trying to push through a carbon tax initiative, also funded by billionaires again, and gets on the ballot and it failed. But they all supported it and all said that was great. Now they don't like the initiative process anymore because suddenly the conservatives seem to have woken up in Washington State and they're actually learning how to do it in a more efficient way. And so they're getting 6 initiatives on the ballot all at once, or on the to the ballot all at once, to the legislature initially and then to the ballot later. And now no longer is the initiative process very cool anymore. They can't stop it because it's an amendment to the Washington State Constitution from 1912, but they're still going to try to push through that. So this whole thing, the Democrats are definitely showing their true colors right now. Plus the censorship bills, HB 1333, which is kind of the back from the dead of last year in the legislative session when it was roundly mocked around the country for being an effort of Bob Ferguson to create the Ministry of Truth, also known as the Domestic Violence Extremist Council or something like that. And so they were gonna do a diversity, inclusion, equity, kind of the DIE agenda thing, where they were gonna put in only people who have skin color and sexual preferences based on the categories that they were going to put in there. And those people were going to be the ones to determine who gets censored and which stories are not allowed. And, of course, they were going to flood the zone with a bunch of lefties, which meant that total silencing and suppression of all First Amendment activity by anybody who doesn't agree with them completely. So that died. It's still alive, died last year, still alive. They're trying to come through some various versions of it. And Steve Hobbs is also tied into this, who's the Secretary of State right now. He's tied into it heavily. These pro-censorship people are ridiculous. So, but there's not a single Democrat that's left in Washington State in any kind of senior leadership position anyway that actually supports democracy. I know we're a republic. I'm just saying they always say that they care about democracy. They don't. Their primary goal is to just power, money, and control, and they're definitely showing it right now. Let's see, keep going. Awake, got a question here. Where in the budget can we see how marijuana tax is spent? Well, that's a good question. Generally, I believe most of the marijuana tax funds that they get, it might go into a dedicated fund, but I believe they sweep that fund periodically, as they usually do every few years, and essentially gets treated like general fund money. I'm sure there were promises made about how they're going to spend the marijuana funds, marijuana taxes, but when it comes to promises on dedicated one-off funds, the legislature breaks out all the time. At least the Democrats in the legislature do. So I don't find it being likely that it's being spent the way that they promised. But it's being spent, so that you can definitely tell. And the problem is, if it's not in this dedicated fund, but I don't believe that that the dedicated fund is. I think it's very fungible. I mean, it gets swept out periodically. When they say sweep the funds, it just means that they'll go out to these dedicated funds and they'll actually take that money out of those funds whenever they feel like they need to. They, being the Democrats, need to spend something for some special project. They'll always sell their special taxes on helping the kids or saving Bambi or something, but when they actually get the money, it's just not gonna be that way. They'll Once they figure you've forgotten about it, they'll just go and change it and make something quite a bit different. Yeah, this is Alex Brown. You mentioned, you had a comment here about it's worth saying that Washington Gun Law did a video about the gun bills and linked in the description how to go through the process to comment for and against them. And I can't recommend enough. If you care about the Second Amendment at all, go to the Washington Gun Law, follow their directions. They're very focused on these issues. Experts there, they do a great job. Follow what they're saying because it really matters. Let's see. Thoughts? Here's a question from Jason. Yeah, thoughts on Democrats pushing a bill to require a judge to let criminals off. Yeah, this is another. They've proposed a ton of bills that I don't find being super realistic that they're going to get to the floor voted on. Certainly not any close to what they've been proposed, mainly because of how openly illegal and unconstitutional they are. But they do seem to be emboldened to push a bunch of really ridiculous bills. And the public safety bills that they've tended to push are designed to make basically designed to make society a lot less safe. They're super pro-criminal, especially if they're really nasty, violent criminals and they've killed a lot of people or they've hurt a lot of people. The Democrats seem to be very much focused on prioritizing getting those people back out on the street as fast as they can. So the bill that you're referring to, Jason, I can't remember the number right now, but I saw it referenced in a couple places, and I read a little bit about it. The judge, if you've got a sentence for longer than 18 years, and by the way, it takes a lot of work for a criminal to get sentenced that long. You have to be quite prolific. You have to get caught frequently. Usually you have to have a strong criminal record and you have to hurt a lot of people before you can get that. Unless you're a Republican and you decided to march without a permit in Washington, D.C., in which case you could probably get about the same jail sentence. But otherwise, these people are generally people who've committed really bad crimes. And the Democrats are focused on putting these people back out on the streets. That is not normal. It is ridiculous. So I would definitely get into the paying attention to see why they think that's a great idea. I really want these bills to have hearings because I want Democrats to get up there and defend them. And they've just gone crazy down here. They've really gone off the road. So let's go on here for some of the questions. Average Geek Joe I don't think I answered the question on 58, 57, but anyway, we'll see how it goes. Pamela, okay, you were talking about Pamela. You're saying it was on the radio as certified, and that the initiatives were provisionally certified, all of them provisional. Which we've got a lot of volunteers that are there watching the signature validation process, and it doesn't, with the numbers of signatures that were turned in, that isn't the area where the Democrats can stop this. These initiatives are going to be there. They have to deal with them. And technical difficulties, yes, always appreciate it. Hit like, hit share. And by the way, I know there's about 70 people or so on the live stream right now. Just tell me. Just you don't have to give me a lot of details, but let me know what city you're watching the live stream in today. Just so you Port Orchard, Burien, wherever you are at. Just let me know. It's kind of fun to see where everybody's coming from, and I always appreciate that. If you want to just let me know, and other people can kind of see where other people who are watching this show are actually coming from. Chris, you got a question. Glenn, I want to know if Congress is the only entity allowed to print money. Shouldn't they be the only ones allowed to collect taxes? Well, for clarification there, Chris, on that, and I don't tend to get more in the federal side of it as much, but it's not so much that Congress is the only entity allowed to print money. They are the ones who set the budget and determine how money is spent legally. The Treasury Department technically is the one who's printing the money, or to be honest, the Federal Reserve ends up doing the funny money and switching program back and forth. If you want to know why the dollar is not going to be worth as much tomorrow as it is today, and it's certainly not as much as it was worth 10 years ago, look at the clowns that are at the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department, and Congress has done its fair share of damage by deciding to jack up our deficit and budget to the point where it's no longer mathematically possible at a federal level to even pay the bill off. So that doesn't end up working out well if anybody studies history, which probably means nobody who's in Congress today. But in theory, Congress has a power of the purse, and they could constrain some of that spending. Senator June Robinson was named as the new chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, who thinks the carbon tax is too new for her to remove it. Who voted for her to be chair in the first place? Well, the way it works, actually, is the senator is, and because the Democrats have a majority in both the House and the Senate, remember, there were a number of years not that long ago where the Democrats didn't control, or at least not by much, either house. And so it was very tight. It was a lot harder for them to be as crazy as they are right now, because you have to go back to like the early 1990s when the Democrats controlled as much of the state legislature as they do now. And the Republicans had their time when they took over from 1994 up until 2002. And one of the things to remember is that Senator June Robinson gets voted in not by anybody on the Republican side. She's really voted in by the Democrats. And so they've decided that she's the genius that they're going to have running the Senate Ways and Means Committee. Listen, the voters are going to have their say in 2024 on the carbon tax, and I don't think any of them like it. And she can't really change it right now, mainly because there's an initiative to repeal it, and the legislature is prohibited under the law to change something, the law itself, that's being addressed by the Citizens Initiative that's going to be on the ballot in November. She could pass the law if she wanted to pass the initiative, and it could become a new law, but that's about it. Let's see. Going down here to the question, I heard brought up again today. Senera Frankenstein. Okay, I heard Semi's 911 phone calls brought up again today. Has he been asked about this yet? From what I've read, he was just frustrated by repeated trespassers, but I've never heard the actual calls. I don't know all the details on that, so I'm aware of the 911 call, but I haven't. I'm not aware of all the details on that. So I'm assuming since we got a governor's race going on, that'll be probably one of the issues that he's dealing with. And people, they always go this back and forth internal fighting, and that'll be one of those issues. Police Pursuit Initiative 2113. News published 3 hours ago by King 5, certified by Secretary of State Steve Hobbs today. Okay, Pamela, thank you. So that's clarification. So they formally certified that initiative now. I actually think that there's a number of them they've already certified, but it doesn't surprise me that they've gotten that one through. They'll all get through because I was there. I mean, there's a lot of them that got turned in. Let's see. You got questions down here. I'm trying to get to some questions here, guys. And by the way, just as a quick update, I got people listening. Karen out of Auburn, Burien, Monroe, Seattle, multiple people out of Seattle, Spokane, Port Orchard, Battleground, Iona. Well, okay. Centralia, Chehalis, Camano Island, the Tulalip area. Maybe the Tulalip tribe there for Judy. Spanaway, Vancouver, Marysville. That's always fun. So all over the state, there's people who share your concern about freedom and liberty, and they're all listening to this podcast. Live stream, Ask Me Anything right now.
Cristiano, you got actually, let me, Chris M. Glen, when was the last time Washington had an audit for all expenditures? The answer to that's never. I don't think they've ever had an audit like that. The way the auditor's office does audits, and I think sometimes it's important to just be sort of aware of how they do this, is the state auditor's office is responsible for auditing. I'm going to put, air quotes around that, auditing local government as well as state agencies. Well, what that means is not the same thing to those of us in the private sector that are familiar with real audits. These are government audits, which are not even as, like the Inspector General at the federal level does a much more aggressive type of audit. That's not what we do in Washington State. So typically these audits are pre-negotiated with both the state agencies when they do those and with local governments, school districts, cities, fire districts, all these different things around the state. They have teams of these people that go around on a regular basis, and so they're auditing all the time. Just that's their whole job, is run around doing different types of audits. They don't do comprehensive audits when they go in. They do targeted audits on certain types of activities that they may not have looked at recently in the last 3 or 4 years. The one thing to remember is that most fraud goes undetected by audits. Most theft goes undetected by audits. It's not that the auditor doesn't accidentally catch people sometimes, but the structure of the audits isn't done in such a way that you really would catch wrongdoing most of the time. Last I checked, when Brian Sontag was a former auditor there, he had mentioned to me once that something like 2/3 of their actual fraud prosecutions came out of whistleblowers, not because of their audits. And so, but every now and then they can get lucky and catch somebody in the audit. And I support audits. The state itself doesn't ever get completely audited. They'll audit Department of Ecology, right, at one time, and then they'll audit DSHS, and they'll audit the Department of Transportation or Puget Sound Partnership or something, and they'll do more than one at once, but they'll be doing these audits, and they'll only look at a couple things. Maybe it's payroll and the IT department and this division over here. They don't really do complete and comprehensive audits, and so there is no such thing as a complete and full audit. If a Republican were to win as governor, one of the first things they need to do is demand a real audit. The auditor's office probably isn't structurally set up to deliver that real audit. You can coordinate with them. You'd want to bring in people who really are focused on genuinely auditing, and I think that would make a big impact there. Let's see. Oh boy, I better get down here quickly because it's dropping up here. Let's see. Have you been on the Jason Ranch Show? Jason, yes, I have, a number of times. I haven't been just recently, but I've been on the Jason Ranch Show a number of times before. Sorry, I'd missed that one. I'd skipped over that question. Cristiano got a question. What is better, no income tax but sales tax, or income tax and no sales tax? Wondering if it makes sense to retire and stay in Washington. Well, okay, good question. This has always been a question that comes up. So what's the best tax? When you actually do surveys of people and look at the impact of taxes and how it changes your activity in life, property and income taxes are some of the worst. Consumption taxes are the least damaging generally, and consumption tax would be like an income tax or user fees. And there's a libertarian argument why you would only use those and never use an income and a property tax, because income and property tax, property tax just simply steals from success that you've had in the past or hard work that you've had in the past. It's a constant erosion, like rent on your property, or a way to potentially steal from you down the road if you don't happen to pay that tax that they're imposing. Income tax is even worse. It's a tax on your activity and requires a massively intrusive enforcement mechanism, a massive bloated bureaucracy that's focused on enforcing the IRS at the federal level, and then all the lower Department of Revenue, tax collectors at a local level. If you were going to pick a tax, if you could bring in enough revenue to fund the state, a user tax-based system tends to be the least impactful in destroying the economy and constraining the growth of people's ability to live, because they can still constrain their they can, if they need to save money, they can still not spend as much if they want, and they're not going to be taxed. They aren't paying as much in taxes. And so I just find that if I was to choose a place, I would prefer to have a state like Washington, which theoretically doesn't have income tax. I know the capital gains tax, but we got these initiatives out there, so I got a feeling it's going to change things. But I'd rather have no income tax and pay a higher sales tax than have the other way around. But you really have to look at the fact that Washington State has a large property tax that comes in. And if you look at the property tax receipts the average property has, you're looking at about 58% of the money that's collected on property taxes technically goes into education. It's been a bad investment lately under Chris Reichdell's supervision at the OSPI, Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. He's helped destroy public education more than almost anybody else in the history of the state. He's probably encouraged more people to go to homeschool and private school than all the homeschool private school advocates combined over the last couple decades, because he's done such a terrible job in destroying education. You're paying way more than you ever had, and you're getting a lot less for it. So, but property taxes tends to be the primary vehicle by which they fund education in our state. And so if you were going to make substantial changes to that sort of a tax structure, you really want to plan it out a little bit and decide what you're going to be providing for the services that you have. I'm a big guy focused on downsizing government, so that's a really good conversation to have, and I don't find enough Republicans are actually spend the time to look at it and pay attention to what the tax structure should be compared to what it is today. So, Rock, you got a question here, and this is there a list of the criminals let out and where they were released? Well, the answer to that is not really. Sorry. You could look at the Department of Corrections, and the jails are supposed to tell you when somebody's released. It has to be public and all that kind of stuff because we don't have secret jails here, unless you're a J6 guy, and then they'll put you in the hole for a couple years. But unless you've committed a crime against bureaucracy, if you've just gone out and murdered people or raped them or stolen cars or something, then they have to keep track, and it's very public. Sorry. What they've done, though, is with the early release of the criminals, it's kind of done county by county. There's not really a master list. So I'm not familiar with anybody who's been tracking that in that way. It would be a good thing to start doing. And the real question is, what was the original sentencing that they got? And then what did they actually receive? Because nobody's getting the full sentence when they're sentenced in the first place. Yeah, there's Jason. You had a question. You had the tax on ammo. Looks like of course everybody would be buying ammo somewhere else, and that's completely crazy. So, and that was one of the gun and the anti-gun bills that were proposed. I don't know if that's going anywhere. So, but yeah, that's how it is. Let's see. Gregorius Greg, okay, asking early this year, I asked, what should we do to promote freedom and liberty after being elected into office? And now that I'm in, it seems that it's harder to fire everyone because it is harder to fire everyone because I don't, or I can't. What do you think? So anyway, you still have to focus, I think. So let's just say you get into elected office, and it sort of depends on what kind of majority you have. In most cases, if you're in a 3-person, like if you're in a county commission or if you're in a fire district, or I think that's pretty much, most of those are going to have 3-person commissions unless they're a big fire district. Most city councils have between 5 and 7. Most school boards in the state have 5 elected people, with the city of Seattle, or this Seattle School District has 7. It's the only school district that has more. And then you also have some cities like, Aberdeen, that have like 13 on their city council. It's kind of, there's a couple of strange cities out there that, for a variety of historical reasons, have an unusual volume of people that are on their city council. Charter counties, the 7 counties that went down home rule charter, they have a different number of people on their council. So King, Snohomish, Clark, Pierce, Whatcom, Clallam, and San Juan County, for example. Those guys are going to have, Clallam stayed with 3, and San Juan County went back to 3 finally. So everybody else, though, they have different numbers. And so imagine you get on the council and you're by yourself, or a school board and you're by yourself, or anything like that.
it's a little bit harder. You can influence the policy direction that's going on, but I think you have to go and focus on an approach to, like, with an agenda that you're saying, okay, I'm going to try to shrink the size of government here, or I want to reduce the tax burden on people, or I want to reduce the overhead associated with the bloated bureaucracy where I live. Then it's going to logically lead towards policy reforms that it might initially look like small ball. But if you can start to knock those things off, right, and start to make those changes, I think you start to make an impact. You don't usually come in with a majority instantly. You can come in and then fire everybody. And I don't even know that's necessarily the optimal path to take. Even though I would be aggressive in downsizing government, you can't just come in and like fire everybody. That's not really exactly how it works. You would have to come in and have a plan that makes sense, and you start to systematically work on implementing that plan. One of the things at the federal level where Trump screwed up on, I think, was that he did have an opportunity, could have downsized government quite a bit more. Trump really isn't like institutionally focused on downsizing government the way a libertarian or a kind of traditional conservative might be. And so I think that allowed kind of this festering bureaucracy to exist and sabotage a lot of his efforts. The other thing is you have to differentiate who would you fire. I mean, frontline workers at most state agencies that are doing the real work are not the ones you need to worry about. It's mostly their upper management who have gotten into those positions after a while, and those are the ones you would want to remove first. And then you can gradually backfill as needed or reorganize or downsize as it makes sense. And it's not generally the frontline workers that are costing you the kind of money that you're trying to reduce initially as you go into it. Let's see. Taylor, I got a question. How close are we to civil war? Gosh, I get this question pretty much all the time. I mean, I get it in person quite often. And again, I know there's been an obsession with civil war for a long time. If you believe in the fourth turning sort of approach to generational impact, right? We're roughly in that fourth turning time frame right now where you've gone through the good times, the economy's gone hard, so you got a soft generation with bad elected people in office, and so now things are going to come crashing down, right? And it's easy to look around, and I do think we're in for some tough times. There's no doubt about that. Does that mean you're actually in for civil war? I don't know. It doesn't have to be that way. And I think people have to probably do everything you can to avoid political violence because once you do go down that road, I think that there's a historical ignorance, thanks to public education and especially the lack of attention to the damage that was done in America after the Civil War. The Civil War, created generational animosity and horrible situations in the country for well past 100 years after it ended. And you don't have instant solutions that come about. America actually came out of that a lot better shape than most people would have been able to predict. I'm not sure that's how a civil war would actually look like today. And I think a lot of people I think it's a lazy tendency to like just immediately assume, oh, we'll have a civil war, and because I have guns and ammo at home, I'm going to be fine. It's not going to be that. That's not how it would work. So we really need to work on avoiding that civil war if we can, and sticking to our guns on freedom and liberty, and coming up with practical efforts to come in and make a difference and an impact. And I really think it's important that we don't lose sight of what we have to do as a country to, politically change things without going into full civil war mode. At least that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to that. Let's see. My question was answered. I need a few more isn't that Wyman the plant's job? Awake is a question. I'm assuming you're talking about Kim Wyman and the federal level. I don't know what really she's doing at the federal level now. She left the state. She dropped out in kind of one of the worst ways I can imagine a Republican leaving the state. So I don't see her really coming back, and so I don't know what she's up to. I see Bremerton, Yakima, and Bellingham are represented here. That's great. Hey, Greg, if you're actually in Bellingham, make sure that you come to the Women's Republican Club meeting in downtown Bellingham on the 6th, and I know I'm going to be there for that lunch, and probably doing some other things out there. So maybe if you want to, I'm probably going to try to do some activism training if I can up there.
Let's see, Pamela, you're referencing some of the people who are focused on doing citizens who are kind of doing their own auditors and auditing work. I think that's really important. So I agree with you that they are the best auditors, and they're going to be the ones that tend to find stuff. Remember, government doesn't want to solve its own problems, so you have to force them to solve it, really. Julie Anderson, you got a question. Has Reichert agreed to an interview yet? His campaign manager said yes, and there's been no time set up on it. To be fair, as I've mentioned before, and I'm going to mention again, Semi Bird, I had a lot of people who wanted me to interview him, and I was interested in interviewing him too. And of course, I've run into him like I would with most politicians quite a bit while I'm out on the road. And so I wanted to interview him so that people could hear from him themselves. And I know I should probably do some more long-form interviews. I do kind of have this aspiration to do some more of those this year. And they may not always be in studio, so I may have to do some of them on the road, but I'd like to get some more interviews with some of these people. And I really like these interviews to be open enough that, and long enough that you can kind of get a sense of who that politician is, or at least what they think about things. So I'm going to try to do some more of them. So Reichert, I would expect to be one of the interviews. I interviewed his opponent, Semi Bird, so to be fair, I should be also interviewing him, or at least give him the opportunity to. Haven't set the date up yet, but I would expect if it happens, it'll be in the next couple months. Let's see, what is being done to clean up voter rolls? This is a question from Shannon, and there's a couple things being done to clean up voter rolls. One is just paying a heck of a lot more attention to it. And I will tell you, there's a couple things going on. We had a new auditor elected in Mason County and Kittitas, and one in Grays Harbor, and I believe Franklin County too now, that I think they do care about. These are auditors that definitely care about cleaning up the voter rolls. And so they are doing everything, as far as I can tell, that legally is that they're obligated to do, and whatever they can legally do to clean up the voter rolls. So I don't. So there's that effort that's on a positive. And there's some others that probably don't show up on that list that I think generally do a pretty good job. The biggest problem with voter roll cleanup really exists in just a handful of counties. The big three, of course, Pierce, King, and Snohomish, but also Whatcom, Jefferson, Clallam, and Spokane. Probably Yakima could use a little bit more attention as well. And I still think there's some Clark County challenges that the voter rolls represent. One of the things we were doing was demonstrating some of the problems with voter rolls with the actual ballot or voter challenges, which is a legal process put into the law. And you'll notice that Kim Wyman and the local auditors don't like that law anymore. Now they want to make it so that it's impossible for you to actually help clean up the voter rolls. That it's a proposed bill. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but it's been proposed, and they had a hearing on it. And so that's one of the issues that is coming up. And we'll continue to stay on top of that because there's just a lot of issues that really have to be addressed. Awake, the state gives legal ID to anybody from anywhere with or without any docs and registers them to vote at the same time at your state Department of Licensing. That is true. And we've had Department of Licensing whistleblowers come out and say even when the non-U.S. citizen goes to get their ballot, or I'm sorry, goes to get their driver's license, and they know they can't be registered to vote, and they ask to not be registered to vote, the state registers them to vote anyway. So that's a big problem. And the Department of Licensing is thoroughly and completely and totally corrupt and compromised from the beginning. The reason why they've talked about removing the ability to use Washington State driver's license as ID on airplanes is because of all these Department of Licensing corruption problems and the fact that there's no security there of any kind. So there's going to be a lot to fix when we have to fix that problem. Alex Brown, you got a question here. I've been looking at leaving the state. Been here all my life. It's just been getting too crazy. Any reason to stay? Do you foresee real change happening in 2024? Well, I mean, Alex, here's the thing. You can run, you can't hide, and you won't be able to go anywhere that's going to be that much different than you think you're escaping. The only thing you'll lose is friends and family and your familiarity and with a network that you've built up here over time, and you're going to be the super lib that moves into the new community and that nobody's going to trust, right? At least it'll take you a couple of years before anybody does. And it doesn't matter whether it's Texas or Florida or some other place. Part of the problem that we're seeing right now is that in states that have been historically Republican,
they still have a lot of the same problems being forced on them, either through the blue cities that are in those states, like Boise in Idaho, or Denver in Colorado, or even in Wyoming. I knew somebody moved out to Wyoming, and then they discovered that they were living in one of the town there, and then discovered that that there was a homeless camp basically put into a hotel nearby, and drug addicts were focused there, and just you thought you got away from it, and they found the exact same thing when they got there. I'm looking at Republicans in Idaho doing super stupid things that we know better now. In Washington State, we know that shouldn't be done, and they're still doing it anyway, increasing their taxes, increasing their regulations in a way that builds up the bureaucracy and creates the bloat that they thought they escaped from. And I'm not totally sure why Republicans in North Dakota and South Dakota and Wyoming and Idaho and Texas and stuff are basically falling for the same stories that people fell for here, but because they've never had a fight, and a Democrat there is going to run as a Republican no matter what. So the belief is very weak sometimes in these states that have been typically red. You're not going to find nirvana anywhere. I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to have to win and prevail here. And I don't think you're going to think you get away from as much as you do. I understand why people leave Illinois, New York, and California, right? Just because of the tax burden and the combined problems that have happened there. But a lot of those people who leave, it's unbelievable. They'll move to the state and then basically impose some of the same damage in the state they moved to. And so all the shifting around, I'm not sure it's solving. You're running away, but I'm not sure that's going to help you. I do think you need to live more rurally. I think that overall that makes life a little bit better for you. But that's kind of... That's just one of those things. So ultimately it's up to you to decide if you think that you're gonna get salvation when you move. But nobody I know that's moved, most of what they thought they got away from, initially they think it's very different, and they suddenly start discovering that it's still around where they've moved to, and they might be on a slightly different time cycle, but they're still dealing with the same issues. Let's see. There's a question here about. I'm trying to see if I miss anything. Okay. Chris, Glenn, can I tell the IRS pay my taxes, fines, and interest out of the Ukraine fund? No. I mean, you can try. Yeah, they'll come and take you anyway. So, feel free to try. I don't think that's going to work. You better pay your taxes. Or if you don't, find a solution and get it paid. Get caught up on them if you're behind. Jack, you got a question. Why do I feel hesitant to cash the chicken check? Well, it's understandable. The chicken tuna check, the Ferguson bribe voter checks, I just did another video because it turns out when I did my last video, that was just the beginning of the story, and there's a whole bunch more to the incompetence that Ferguson's displayed, or presumably as an effort to demonstrate how competent he's going to be when he's governor. And the tuna chicken check scandal, as it unfolds here, is just ridiculous. It would have been actually impossible. I don't even know how you could have possibly done it worse than Ferguson did. The degree and significance of incompetence, and especially as anybody who's had any access to voter rolls or mailing lists and to had any history of that at all, there's no way to have done a worse job than what Ferguson did. And that level of incompetence is, I think, it's just going to keep exposing stuff. And it's not just the fact that he's sending tons, saying lots of money to thousands and thousands of dead people everywhere. He's not even matching his own description of the type of people he sent it to. He sent it to people who've never been in Washington State. I mean, it's just this fiasco. And I know he's blaming Experian for this now, but, and that's what a politician does. You blame somebody else for your own problems. But it's just very funny to see how bad that's really going on. Let's see. Let's see. There's a question here. You consider an email newsletter. This is Average Geek Joe. Yeah, my website, I'll send out emails when I do articles. I've not been doing very many articles lately. My fault, nobody else's. I've shifted my website hosting to a freedom-oriented platform so that it's a little bit harder to take down my website in the future. And I'm kind of lumping that into a bunch of other growth plans that I kind of have for this year, I'm hoping. But again, I'm kind of a charity case. I survive on the support of you and a lot of other people like you. So my resources are not extensive, and I'm just totally committed to doing this. And this is how I'm going to spend my life, is trying to push back and change the way things are going. So the email newsletter, it comes out when there's an article, not so much as a regular newsletter. And
a lot of people don't like getting spammed by constant updates. I probably need to do some more of that, and this year I may be doing some of that as well. Let's see. Awake had a question saying that I've lived all over the U.S. and there's many advantages to living in the South. Had to really search myself to land on this choice. If I had young children, I'd be out. Yeah, semi-country living, yep. Advantages for living in the South, 3-digit heat in the summers, tornadoes, storms, bugs. People are much nicer, though. That's true. I've been in the South. I've been around the country a whole bunch. We truly live in the best part of America right now. I've always thought so. Just because we have some crazies in public office at this point in time doesn't mean that you run away and surrender it to them. That's the way I would look it out. David Hill, Washington gun lawyer, how people should check out your YouTube channel. I urge all those to watch. Glen to do the same. What do you think about his work? David, I love the Washington gun lawyer. Everything about that, everything he's doing, the video, the reports, the documentation is really good. So I'm a big supporter. Let's see. I'm trying to see about the rest of these things here, questions. There's a lot of different comments, guys, coming in here, and it's hard for me to pull questions out of all that. What do you think of the sovereign movement? This is a question from Rock. Okay, so this is not a bad question. So the sovereign movement, and I'm not an expert. I've just had to deal with people who take the sovereign citizen sort of approach periodically. It's kind of a fad. It comes and it goes every 5 to 10 years. I've seen it happen about 3 times since I've been really active again in politics. But it's been around for probably 40 years, 50 years now. And there's some fundamental truth to a couple things, and the hard part is people lump in the elements that are truthful with stories that are not practical or approaches that they want you to do in your life that aren't going to give you the support that you think that they tell you it is. And when you go to jail or you get arrested or you get in trouble for turning yourself into an easy target in that way over something that doesn't give you any benefit, those people who convince you to go do that are nowhere to be found. Sometimes they even charge you money, and they'll have you pay them to do some of the stuff. I've seen that happen in a few lawsuits, and that's even a bigger scam. Usually they aren't even attorneys, and so they come in and they'll get you stuck in a really tough legal situation, and you're fighting over trying to defend your property or your business or something, and they're draining all your funds, and so it's a total disaster. I've seen this happen a couple times. There's a fundamental belief in property rights that's critical that I think that people are losing in the weeds of having to fight over central planning and all these other schemes. And if you take away property rights, you essentially take away all rights. It's a rapid decline into really bad government. It's not a good thing. So one of the things to remember is that if you come back to some of the fundamental basics, most of which are in our Constitution, regardless of how much that people have chosen to ignore it, the Constitution is largely a pretty solid document, both the state and federal level. There are improvements that could be made, but there is a process to make those improvements. And I don't think that the sovereign movement has been an effective path for anybody to go down. I've never seen it work out very well for anybody that does. And I do try to judge things on their merits. If they fail every single time, it's usually good. Maybe try something different. Let's see. Keep going down here. Jason, you got a question. Is there enough time in the session to pass everything? No, of course not. I mean, they're going to pass 90% of all the bills, maybe 95% of them that are proposed right now won't become law. And so the question is which of them are actually going to go through. If it's not too late, Alex, you got a question here. If it's not too late, what's the latest on the chicken checks? I haven't heard much in the last week other than the Dems dismissing it. Well, it's a great story. I'm going to keep telling it. I got another video that's coming out. I filmed it today of people who died during the Cold War who are now getting the tuna chicken bribe checks from Ferguson. And it just gets more ridiculous the more you look at it. The Democrats, of course, don't want to talk about it because Ferguson's their guy, and he's proving to be attempting to limbo even lower on the competency scale than Inslee already has demonstrated that he is. That's not generally demonstrating a lot of confidence, at least. I mean, they'll put on a brave face, but behind the scenes,
there's a lot of people. I'm not sure. It's kind of a mess. So, but it's fun to talk about that mess because it's a pointless level of stupidity and incompetence that needs to be exposed. Let's see. Breaking bolts. Do you know about citizen testimony in our legislature? Do we have the right to testify, or is it purely up to the chair? Recently, it seems I've been denied the time to testify because I testify so much. Well, actually, you do have the right to testify. One of the things you may find that does happen sometimes, especially this is true with Zoom, in person, I've rarely ever been stopped from testifying. I haven't testified as much lately as I have in the past. It kind of comes and goes in waves for me, but usually you'll get a chance to testify. And this is just another little story. Just like the Democrats hate vote, they don't like voting if they don't win, so they're trying to restrain the ability of people they don't like to be on the ballot, and they don't like initiatives when it's not their idea, so they want to prevent people from putting initiatives on the ballot unless it's their idea. And they also don't like public testimony when it's not the public testimony that supports them. You see this right now in Spokane with the new city council out there, which is one of the worst city council race results in the state of Washington. Even Seattle shifted to be more reasonable, and Spokane went the other direction with a complete collection of horrific and terrible people that got in there, led by the completely corrupt Lisa Brown. But one of the things that they're doing is they're trying to restrict the people's ability to testify in public hearings there in Spokane in a way they never have ever in the history of Spokane. And that's an indication about them trying to silence their opposition any way they can. So it's one thing I would be pushing back on quite a bit is making sure that they don't restrict your ability to speak and make a stink out of it if they do. There's, that's what it is. Now, breaking bolts, I see you making a point again here about over Zoom. Yeah, listen, if you're serious about testifying, and you can get there, if you can't, it's fine. But if you're close enough geographically to get to the legislature, in-person testimony is always more powerful and impactful, in my opinion. You don't have the tech problems. You don't have the instant mute problems. You don't have the Democrats don't like you, so they don't let you get up there. You're facing them in the hearing, and it's a little bit harder for them to shut you down. The hearing that the volume of people that come to these meetings sometimes will be such that there's sometimes no way to actually get back and do the testimony. But when you're not there, it's easy. They just hit the, sorry guys, and they dump you. And that's, I think, what you're experiencing. So I would go in person if you're serious about testifying, but you have to be close enough. If you can't, then you're taking your chances when you're doing these Zoom testimonies. TZ Burton, I just moved to 30th Ledge District in Federal Way. Do you know anything about state legislator Christine Reeves, Jamila Taylor, or Senator Claire? All Democrats. Yeah, they're bad, all of them. Christine Reeves is probably the smartest of the three, but she's just, she proposes clown bills, and none of them are actually serious about legislating. They're really unserious people and not very sharp people, and we need real people. And actually, the 30th is one of those districts that can flip. It wasn't that long ago. You had several Republicans in that seat. And with the crime problems, the Stand Up Federal Way, and some of the other issues that are going on, the recent elections in the Federal Way City Council, I do think that there's some change that it can definitely be made to happen. So, let's see. Jason, you got a question here about on the Vancouver City Council. Are they crazy like Portland? Well, they're not quite as bad as Portland, but you've got some bad people on the Vancouver City Council. You've had some reasonable people over times, but right now you got some bad people there, and there hasn't been a lot of contested elections in Vancouver, so they're getting away with a little bit more. Not as bad as Portland, but it's definitely worth mentioning. TZ, you got a question here about what is our most effective way to influence our legislature. I can't get down to Olympia. Well, I would say it's still worth sending emails and be very clear, right? Opposed or support. Oppose this bill, support this bill. Remember, those emails are most important to the people in the district in which you live. So they do care about that mostly, but the others will still track. And sometimes they've sold their souls, and so they're going to vote a different way anyway. But you'll be surprised every now and then, when there's enough pushback. I've seen many times the legislature change directions over what they thought they were going to do in the beginning of session. This is a short session. They're not going to stay in Olympia forever. They're going to try to get out as quick as they can.
some of the stupid proposed bills that they are very, very aware of, that they know will not come through. They're doing this just because they're trying to raise some money from some of their special interests that are going to give them checks, and they can come in and say, see, I proposed this insane bill that takes away everybody's firearms. And yeah, it didn't get out of committee, but we'll try better next time. And that was kind of the path that the Democrats followed in the state for decades. Now they've been able to get a couple bills through, and so they're pretty excited about it, and that's that drama, buildup in the drama. Also has the potential to restrict and restrain how much cash they can raise, because the people who want the gun control bills, now they go to Idaho, or they go to Wyoming or South Dakota. They start focusing on these other states, Alabama, right? They start going to these other states, and that's where they're putting their money in, because they feel like they already got what they wanted here. The guys that push the bill, most of them don't really believe much about what they're doing, so they now they've lost some of their revenue, cash into their campaigns. They want that money again, so there's going to be this big push and back and forth, and I think a lot of them are going to be. I don't think it's going to go as well as they think they are. Let's see. Alex, you got a question here about are there any noteworthy left-leaning politicians in the state that aren't horrible right now? No, not really. I mean, you have a couple that are kind of more moderate Democrats. They've purged most of the independent-thinking Democrats out of the state now. Even Steve Hobbs, who's a terrible Secretary of State, he was actually a problem for the Democrats when he was in the Senate, because he actually understood that math was real, and there's no greater heresy than that. And so the Democrats didn't like him because occasionally he stopped bills that didn't make financial sense. So they had to, when Inslee appointed him to replace Kim Wyman to the Secretary of State's office, it was really more to get him out of the Senate, not because anybody cared about him being there. You have a similar scenario in the 5th legislative district, where Senator Mark Mullet who's running for governor as kind of this middle of the road Democrat. He's another Democrat who actually believes in math. Now, Mark is probably a business guy first and foremost. He's not conservative at all when it comes to most of the social issues, but he is. He's aware that math is real and that businesses actually have to make money, and that jacking taxes up to the roof is not the solution. But he's also been completely abandoned by the Democrat Party, and one of the reasons why he's running for governor is that I don't think he could be reelected in the state Senate there right now, not as a Democrat anymore. So, and that's it. Charles, you got a question. Did we already cover the changing in the definition of vaccine? I did not on this talk yet, but that's certainly a good story. Anyway, there's more to work about. There's more to talk about on that. That was another bad idea. So listen, guys, I'm reaching the end of the live stream for today. I'm sorry it was on Thursday and not on a Tuesday like it normally is. Please make sure that you like and share the video. I'll have some new videos. I've got 3 of them that I filmed today, so we'll have a sequence of them coming out pretty soon. So we'll be able to, hopefully that you'll like some of those videos, share them with others. I've got a lot of activism plans and projects for this year. I might be able to take some time in some of the future live streams to go into some more of the details on that if I can. But also I'm going around the state. If you got a group out where you live and you want to get some activism training, and there's all kinds of things that I can focus on. I try to adapt the training to the interests and the needs of the people who I'm presenting. But if you got a group that you can organize, doesn't matter if it's Okanagan, Chewelah, Walla Walla, wherever it is, try to get a decent number of people together. To drive long distances, it's always a little bit easier if there's more. But 30 people or so, I'm usually willing to drive out and do some training. So, and I'd like to help, and I'd like to get more people inspired to get started and get going. It really does make an impact. Anyway, so thank you guys so much for watching the show. Again, don't forget to subscribe, share, like, encourage other people to do the same. The show, my channel overall is fairly heavily shadow banned, and as a Rumble channel will get up and running, that's not really so much a substitute because YouTube's still a better platform to reach new people. So please get people to come back, and as long as I can keep this channel up and running, I will. And when they take it away, it'll be on Rumble, and I'll have them both going here pretty soon. But at least that way, there's a way of reaching out to more people and getting them caught up on what's going on in our state, and to some extent, what's going on around the country. So anyway,
I hope all is well, and we'll see you next week. I'm anticipating doing it on Tuesday at a more the time that I would normally do it. Thank you guys again for watching, and we will talk to you next week.